At some point tomorrow, I might devote some time to talking about how Dr. Deborah Birx has really become a vector of Donald Trump disinformation, covering up his incompetence and suggesting he has a clue. But for today, I want to talk more generally about the fact that doctors are being pushed out of the picture when it comes to Trump's White House coronavirus task force, and that Dr. Anthony Fauci has essentially been disappeared by Donald Trump from the press briefings. Over time, Fauci has had a smaller and smaller role. He used to stand on the stage in view of the cameras. Then he was on the stage out of view of the cameras, but he would come up if asked a question. Then he would sit on the side and come up if someone had a question. Lately, he's just not been at the briefings at all. Now, in conjunction with this, we have a new report that this is part of a calculated trend where Donald Trump is going to be pushing doctors away from the briefings. And instead, the briefings, as we know, we don't know whether questions will or won't even be allowed after Thursday's fiasco, but it is going to be an economically based briefing. And I'm guessing part of that is if you only talk about economics, you reduce the chances of wondering aloud about injecting bleach. If there's one person who should be at every briefing, it's Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's been running infectious disease for the US for 35 years. He's actually an expert on global pandemic. He's actually a medical doctor. He had been at almost every one of the first 45 or so briefings, and then suddenly he's gone. We know why it's happening. The more of a fool that Trump makes out of himself, the more Anthony Fauci is asked to contradict Donald Trump. And Fauci's been careful. We've talked about this before. Fauci has said, I can't jump up every time Trump says something wrong and interrupt the president and correct him. He would be fired if he did that. And Fauci, my guess is, has calculated his presence and his role being maintained in any form is better than being fired and being replaced with some kind of total Trump sycophant who may not even really know anything about infectious disease. So more and more now, Fauci questions are being asked to Trump. You said X and Dr. Fauci said Y. Can you explain that? Are you not on the same page? And Trump tends to say, I didn't see it. I don't know what Anthony said. They are now pulling Fauci further away. And the defense from the White House is Fauci does lots of other things other than just go to the briefings. He has many other responsibilities. Well, okay, but didn't he have those responsibilities during the 45 meetings he did attend for more than a month until he was just disappeared? And we know why it's being done. Fauci continues to say we need to ramp up testing dramatically. Trump says testing is fine and we have the most in the world. Of course, we're 42nd in testing per capita. Trump said in a recent briefing, the virus may not come back in the fall. Dr. Fauci said in that same briefing, we will have coronavirus with us in the fall. And then in the midst of all this about Fauci, we learn that the White House wants to just get away from doctors altogether at the briefing and talk about economics instead. White House official telling Axios that the press briefings will continue, but that the virus stuff will take a back seat, if you can imagine, while economic stuff and a more forward-looking message talking about opening her up and stuff like that is what we are going to hear. So that's code for stocks and reopening and V-shaped recovery discussions rather than death toll, vaccinations, therapeutics. And it's an election-focused strategy. Axios reports that there are officials who have told Trump, this is hurting you. The press briefings are hurting you. And your polling against Biden, in particular among older Americans, is imploding. So the bottom line of the strategy is the longer this goes on, it's worse for Trump. That's clear. If the press briefings become a daily reminder that Trump just keeps bragging about the same things every day, the death toll stays high and continues climbing, that's bad for Trump in November. The November election will be a Trump referendum, but it's going to be more a referendum on the economy than on the virus. And what I mean by that is Trump has obviously bungled the virus response, but changing your vote based on the virus response does not seem hugely likely for reasons we discussed last week with Rachel Bitecofer. On the other hand, we know one of the main things that determines does an incumbent president get reelected or removed is the perception of the state of the economy around the time of the election. This would explain why Trump would move to an economic message while doctors continue to be pushed into the background. Tomorrow, we'll have an updated report on testing. And in the meantime, I would love for Dr. Fauci to start doing his own daily updates on YouTube. My guess is he would be fired for that. So what we have is a global 100-year pandemic. The United States is choosing to sideline the medical professionals to talk about stocks and reopening barbershops. That's where we are right now, and it's embarrassing. Today's program is sponsored in part by the Galaxy series, which is a series of 3 books written by a really great author, Ithal. And I would call the genre sort of political science fiction. I've really enjoyed the books. It looks at the future. It explores what could happen to planet Earth if we stay on our path environmentally. It deals with space travel. It takes a sort of deep dive into political psychology. And it's a really intriguing, sort of dystopian look at the future. The stories are told from a perspective that I think people in the audience would really appreciate. And there's a ton of really excellent artwork also that accompanies the books. I read a lot of books in this genre, and I'll tell you, these books are very well written. The plot, the characters are compelling. If you're someone who likes politics and sci-fi, you'll really like these books. Again, it's the Galaxy series. Check it out for yourself. For a limited time, we have a special deal set up where my audience can get each book for just 99 cents. Go to davidpakman.com/galaxy.